The Galactic Assembly Station floated in the darkness of space like a giant crystal. It orbited a peaceful world called Prime, where the sky was always blue and the weather was always gentle. Inside the station, representatives from 847 different alien species worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. On this particular day, the council was meeting in one of the station's largest chambers. The room was circular, with seats arranged in rings that rose toward the ceiling. At the center stood a tall reptilian creature named. His scales were blue-green and his eyes were large and kind. He came from a world covered mostly by calm oceans. Tapped his staff against the floor to call the meeting to order. Around him, various aliens settled into their seats. There was a thick-bodied creature from a world where gravity was much stronger than normal. His people were short and powerful, built to withstand the crushing weight of their home planet. Next to him sat Quinn, a thin being covered in fine sand-colored fur. She came from a desert world where water was rare and the sun burned hot. On the opposite side of the chamber, Mediator watched everything with her 3 eyes. She came from a volcanic moon where the ground shook constantly and rivers of melted rock flowed across the surface. Her people had learned to live in the small areas between the lava flows. The council was not like other councils in the assembly. Most alien species came from what they called garden worlds. These were planets where everything was easy. The temperature stayed comfortable. Food grew without much effort. Dangerous animals were rare or small. Life was simple and peaceful on garden worlds. But not every species was so lucky. Some evolved on worlds that were harder, where survival took real effort. These were though most of them were not truly terrible. A world might be called if it had strong gravity, or if it was very hot, or very cold, or if the air was a bit toxic. The Council helped species from these harder worlds join the larger galactic community. Today, the Council was discussing a species called They came from a planet where large predatory animals roamed the forests. They had learned to build strong walls and use basic weapons to protect themselves. Several Council members thought they were ready to join the assembly. Others were not sure. Was about to call for a vote when a junior officer rushed into the chamber. The young alien's face showed fear and confusion. "Council leader," the officer said, breathing hard, "we have detected a vessel approaching the station." Size narrowed. "A vessel from which member species?" "That is the problem, sir. The vessel is not in our records. It comes from uncharted space." A murmur ran through the council chamber. Uncharted space was rare these days. The assembly had explored most of the galaxy. They had made contact with nearly every species capable of space travel. "Show us," commanded. A large screen appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed an image of space, and there, moving slowly toward the station, was a ship unlike anything the council had ever seen. The vessel was dark, almost black. Its shape was angular and sharp, with no smooth curves or decorative elements. Most importantly, it made no sound. In galactic society, ships were designed to be friendly and welcoming. They had bright lights and sent out constant communication signals to announce their presence. They played music or broadcast greetings. The silence from this dark vessel was disturbing. "Security Chief," said calmly, "what is the status of this vessel?" An armored alien stepped forward. Was a member of one of the galaxy's warrior species, though even they rarely saw combat. "The vessel has made no hostile moves, Council Leader. However, it also does not respond to our hailing frequencies. It simply stopped at the diplomatic distance and went completely silent." "Silent?" Quinn asked, her voice trembling slightly. "No communications at all?" "None, no identification signals, no responses to our questions, nothing." The council members exchanged worried looks. In 3,000 years of recorded history, no species had ever approached the assembly with complete silence. It was considered extremely rude, even threatening. Hours passed. The mysterious vessel remained in position, silent and dark. The council debated what to do. Some wanted to send security forces to investigate. Others argued they should wait. Wise from many years of diplomacy chose patience. Finally, after the sun had set on the planet below, something changed. A simple text message appeared on every screen in the council chamber. It was written in perfect galactic standard, the common language all species use to communicate. The message read, "Humanity requests attendance at the council. We have been observing your protocols and believe we qualify for membership. We apologize for our abrupt arrival. Our ship maintains silence to avoid causing distress." The message included coordinates for a planet in a distant part of the galaxy. The planet was called Earth. Below that was a note that surprised everyone. We understand our arrival may seem unusual. We discovered one of your survey probes near our home system 200 years ago. The probe classified our planet as incompatible with civilized life. We thought you might want to know that life found a way anyway. We mean no harm. We only wish to introduce ourselves and perhaps learn from you, as you might learn from us. Read the message 3 times. The other council members sat in stunned silence. Was the first to speak. They apologize for causing distress. What does that mean? Mediator pulled up the old survey records. Her 3 eyes widened as she read. The probe file from that region? It is here. The probe did scan a planet called Earth. The report says the planet was classified as a Class 5. The probe recommended no contact. It stated that any species evolving there would be too dangerous for peaceful integration. Class 5, Quinn whispered. That is the highest classification. I did not think any truly Class 5 worlds existed. Stood taller. He had led the council for 30 years and had never seen a situation quite like this. A species from a true Class 5, one dangerous enough that the old survey probes recommended against contact, had traveled across space to introduce themselves, and they were apologizing for their manner of arrival. We will hear them, announced. Send a message granting them permission to approach. We will receive their representatives in this chamber tomorrow at dawn. Security Chief, prepare a full honor guard, but keep weapons powered down. If they wanted to harm us, they would have done so already. Nodded and left to make arrangements. That night, no one in the council slept well. They all wondered the same thing. What kind of species would evolve on a world so dangerous that ancient survey probes warned against contact? And why would such a species approach with apologies and requests instead of demands and threats? In the darkness of space, the silent vessel waited. Inside, 3 humans prepared for the most important meeting in their species' history. They checked their diplomatic credentials and rehearsed their presentation. They knew the aliens would be afraid. Earth was not a kind world. Humanity was not a weak species. But they also knew that strength and kindness were not opposites. Tomorrow, they would have to prove that to beings who had never imagined that a species like theirs could exist. The dark vessel remained silent, its engines powered low, still avoiding the frequencies that would cause distress to the station's inhabitants. Even now, in these final hours before first contact, humanity's first instinct was to avoid causing harm. The galaxy was about to meet something it had never encountered before. Predators who chose to be dawn came to prime with soft pink light. Inside the Galactic Assembly Station, the council chamber was full. Every seat was occupied. Word had spread about the mysterious visitors, and representatives from dozens of other councils had asked permission to observe. Stood at the center of the chamber, his blue-green scales catching the light. He had barely slept. All night he had reviewed the old survey data about Earth. The numbers were disturbing. High gravity, violent weather, dangerous radiation from the sun, extreme temperature changes. The probe had been right to classify it as Class 5. The chamber doors opened. 3 figures walked in and the entire room fell silent. The humans were bipedal, walking upright on 2 legs like many species in the galaxy. They were average height, not particularly tall or short. They had no visible weapons, no armor, no natural defenses that anyone could see. They looked at first glance almost ordinary. But something was wrong. The predator species in the chamber felt it first. The way the humans moved was too smooth, too controlled. Their eyes scanned the room constantly, taking in every detail. When they walked, their footsteps made almost no sound. One of the observers, a species descended from pack hunters, felt their fur stand on end. The 3 humans stopped at the speaker's platform. The one in the center stepped forward. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations except a small patch that showed a blue and green planet. Council leader, the human said, his voice clear and respectful. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. My name is Daniel Grant. I am the captain of the vessel waiting outside your station. This is Laura, our chief diplomat, and Brandon Cole, our science officer. Inclined his head. Captain Grant, we welcome you to the council. Your message said that humanity wishes to apply for membership. Is this correct? It is, Laura said, stepping forward. She was shorter than Daniel, with red hair tied back from her face. Her expression was friendly but serious. We know our arrival was unusual. We apologize for any concern we caused. We have been observing your broadcasts for 20 years, learning your languages and studying your culture. When we felt we understood enough, we decided it was time to introduce ourselves. 20 years, Mediator said, her 3 eyes blinking in surprise. You have been watching us for 20 years without making contact. Brandon Cole nodded. He was younger than the other two, with light brown hair and quick, intelligent eyes. We wanted to understand you before we approached. First contact is too important to rush. We needed to know if you were peaceful, if you valued cooperation, if you would be willing to accept a species like us. A species like you, rumbled. Explain what you mean. Laura touched a control panel, and a holographic image appeared above the speaker's platform. It showed a planet, mostly blue with white clouds and brown and green continents. This is Earth, our home world. 200 years ago, one of your automated survey probes passed through our star system. It scanned our planet and filed a report. That report classified Earth as incompatible with civilized life. She paused, then smiled slightly. The probe was not wrong. Earth is not a kind world, but it is our world and we love it. Numbers and data began scrolling next to the image of Earth. Quinn leaned forward, reading carefully. Her eyes widened. Your gravity, she said. It is 1.3 times galactic standard. Yes, Laura confirmed. We are built to handle heavier weight than most species. Grunted, my world has higher gravity. This alone does not make a. You are correct, Brandon said. But Earth has more than just high gravity. Our atmosphere contains oxygen at levels much higher than most inhabited worlds. This oxygen feeds massive wildfires that can burn for months. Our weather systems are violent. We have storms with winds strong enough to destroy buildings. We have rotating columns of air called tornadoes that can level entire cities. We have tropical storms called hurricanes that can flood thousands of square miles. More images appeared. Council members watched with growing unease. They saw massive waves crashing against cliffs, lightning striking the ground hundreds of times in minutes, earthquakes splitting the ground open. Our planet is geologically active, Laura continued. We have earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. 71% of our surface is covered in salt water. This water is corrosive and undrinkable. Many of our deadliest creatures live in these oceans. These factors are concerning, admitted. But other council members come from worlds with individual challenges similar to these. What makes Earth different? The 3 humans exchanged glances. Then Daniel spoke, his voice quiet but firm. It is not the planet that makes us different, council leader. It is what the planet created. Brandon touched the control panel again. New images appeared and several council members gasped. The hologram showed creatures that looked like nightmares. A massive fish with rows of sharp teeth. A reptile with jaws powerful enough to crush bone. A snake with venom that could kill in minutes. A striped cat larger than most of the beings in the chamber. Earth has millions of species, Brandon explained. They compete for resources constantly. Predators hunt prey. Prey develops defenses. Predators evolve better hunting methods. This cycle has continued for billions of years. The result is a planet where almost everything is designed to kill or avoid being killed. Quinn stood up, her voice shaking. How did your species survive in such a place? Daniel's expression did not change. We did not just survive, Representative Quinn. We became the apex predator of our entire planet. The room went completely silent. Laura continued the explanation, her voice calm. Early humans were not strong. We did not have claws or sharp teeth. We were not particularly fast, but we had 2 advantages, endurance and intelligence. We could run for hours without stopping. We could track prey across vast distances. We learned to work together in groups. We made tools and weapons. We used fire. Fire, several council members said at once. Yes, Brandon confirmed. We learned to control fire thousands of years ago. We used it for warmth, for cooking, for protection, and for hunting. Fire is one of the most destructive forces on our planet, and we made it serve us. Daniel picked up the explanation. We persistence hunted animals much larger than ourselves. We would follow them for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We set traps. We learned the behavior of every dangerous species on our planet. And when an animal threatened us, we hunted it until it learned to fear us or avoid us. He paused, looking around the chamber. Every apex predator on Earth knows to stay away from humans, the great sharks in our oceans, the massive bears in our forests, the big cats on our plains. They all learned that humans are more dangerous than they are. Mediator spoke carefully. You are describing a species that evolved to hunt and kill. Why should we welcome such beings into the assembly? Laura's expression softened. Because we did not stop evolving, Mediator. Our bodies evolved to hunt, yes, but our minds evolved further. We developed language, art, philosophy, and science. We learned to ask questions about right and wrong. We built civilizations. We created laws to protect the weak. We developed medicine to heal the sick. Brandon added, we looked at our own history, at the violence we had done to each other and to our world, and we chose to be better. We chose cooperation over conquest. We chose protection over predation. Daniel stepped forward, his voice strong. We are dangerous, yes. We evolved on a brutal world and we bear the marks of that evolution. We are strong, fast, and resilient. We heal quickly from injuries. We can endure extreme pain. We do not give up easily. These traits made us successful hunters. He paused, meeting eyes. But we chose to use these traits differently. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We rescue the lost. We defend the innocent. We are predators who decided to become guardians. The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then spoke, his deep voice thoughtful. You speak well, Captain Grant, but words are easy. How do we know humanity will act as you claim? Laura smiled. Ask us to prove it. Considered this. In ancient times, the council had tested new species to understand their true nature. The practice had been abandoned centuries ago, considered too harsh. But perhaps with a species this unusual, the old ways were appropriate. Very well, said. We will adjourn for now. The council will discuss your application and decide how to proceed. We will call you when we have reached a decision. The three humans bowed respectfully and left the chamber. As soon as the doors closed behind them, the council erupted in debate. Some members were terrified of humanity. Others were fascinated. All of them agreed on one thing. They had never encountered a species quite like this before. In their guest quarters, Daniel, Laura, and Brandon sat together in silence. They are afraid of us, Brandon finally said. Laura nodded. They should be. We are frightening, objectively speaking. Daniel looked out the window at the stars. The question is whether they will see past their fear, whether they will understand that being dangerous and being good are not opposites. The council met in private chambers, away from the observers and recording devices, sat at the head of a smaller table with only the core council members present. Quinn and Mediator looked tired. They had been reviewing data about humanity for hours. I do not know what to think, Quinn admitted, her sand-colored fur rippling with anxiety. Everything they said about their world is true. I checked the survey probe data myself. Earth is more dangerous than any inhabited world in our records. Nodded slowly. And humans are the product of that world, persistence hunters, pack coordinators, tool users, high endurance, quick healing, pattern recognition, abstract thinking. We have seen these traits in many species, but never all together in one being. Mediator tapped her fingers on the table. What concerns me most is their predatory nature. They hunted every other species on their planet into submission. They made themselves the apex of their entire ecosystem through intelligence and cooperation. That combination is terrifying. But they also speak of choosing peace, said quietly. Of protecting the weak, of cooperation over conquest. Are these merely words, or do they reflect humanity's true nature? The room fell silent, finally spoke. We need to test them, not with questions or hypothetical scenarios, with something real. Quinn looked up sharply. The old ways, we have not used those methods in 800 cycles. The old ways were abandoned because most species were predictable, said. Garden world species always choose peace because they have never known true hardship. But these humans are different. They know violence intimately. They understand death and survival. Words will not tell us what they would actually do when faced with a difficult choice. Considered this carefully. The old council tests had been simple but effective. Present a species with a moral dilemma. Give them a choice between their own benefit and the of others. Watch what they choose when nobody is forcing their hand. Very well, said. We will test them, but we must do so carefully. If they pass, we welcome them. If they fail, we must be prepared for the consequences. Mediator understood immediately. You are thinking of the incident. Everyone at the table tensed. There were a warrior species that had applied to join the assembly 800 cycles ago. They had been rejected, and they had responded with violence. It had taken 17 species working together to stop them. Thousands had died. If we reject humanity, said slowly, and if they respond poorly, we may face an even greater threat. A species with humanity's capabilities, angry and isolated, could be extremely dangerous. Then we must test them fairly, said, and we must hope they pass. 2 hours later, the 3 humans were called back to the council chamber. They walked in calmly, showing no sign of nervousness. Daniel, Laura, and Brandon took their places at the speaker's platform. Stood, Captain Grant, we have discussed your application thoroughly. Before we can make a decision, we must understand how humanity would act in certain situations. We will present you with a scenario. Please answer honestly. Of course, Council Leader, Daniel said. Imagine this situation. A human colony ship is traveling through space. Your people detect a distress signal from an alien vessel. When you arrive, you find a ship from a species much weaker than humans. They are stranded and dying. Their engines have failed and their life support is running out. They have perhaps 2 days before they all perish. Laura listened carefully, her expression serious. Continued. However, your people also discover that this alien ship is carrying valuable cargo, technology and resources worth enough to fund humanity's expansion for an entire generation. The aliens are too weak to defend their ship. They cannot stop your people from taking what you need. In fact, they would likely give you their cargo in exchange for rescue. The council leader paused. But your colony ship has limited resources. Rescuing the aliens would require time and energy. You would have to share your food and water. You would have to delay your journey to your new colony. What would humanity do in this situation? Laura looked at with genuine confusion on her face. We would rescue them, obviously. Why would we let them die? But the resources, Quinn said from her seat. The cargo could advance your species significantly. Daniel's voice was firm. At the cost of innocent lives, that is not advancement, that is murder. We would save them. Brandon added, Council Leader, I do not mean to be rude, but this question confuses me. Are you asking if we would let people die so we could steal their belongings? The answer is no. We would never do that. Several council members exchanged glances. The humans had answered without hesitation, without even discussing it among themselves. Pressed further, Captain Grant, representative, mentioned that humanity has a history of warfare. You have fought among yourselves. You have killed your own kind. Why should we believe you would show mercy to aliens when you have not always shown mercy to each other? Laura's expression became sad. You are right, Council Leader. Humanity has done terrible things. We have fought wars. We have enslaved each other. We have destroyed entire civilizations of our own people. Our history is full of darkness. She paused, meeting his eyes. But that is exactly why we know the value of mercy now. Our worst chapters taught us what happens when we choose violence over compassion, when we choose power over justice. We learned those lessons the hard way, through immense suffering. We will not forget them. Daniel stepped forward. Our violent past is not something we hide or deny. It is something we carry with us as a warning. We know what we are capable of when we make the wrong choices. That knowledge makes us more determined to make the right choices now. Mediator spoke up, her 3 eyes focused intently on the humans. Let me present a harder scenario then. What if saving the aliens required more than just inconvenience? What if rescuing them meant risking human lives? What if some of your own people would die in the attempt to save strangers? The 3 humans did not hesitate. All 3 spoke at once. Then we risk it. Laura continued alone. Mediator, we have a saying on Earth. It is simple but important to us. We say that with great power comes great responsibility. We are strong, we are fast, we are resilient. These traits give us power, but power without responsibility is just cruelty. Brandon said, if we used our strength only for our own benefit, if we only helped others when it was convenient, then we would be no different than the predators who still roam our world. We would be animals acting on instinct, not intelligent beings making moral choices. Daniel's voice was quiet but intense. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what being human means to us. If we have to sacrifice our own comfort, our own resources, even our own lives to help the innocent, then we sacrifice. Because that is the right thing to do. Stood up from his seat. His heavy frame moved slowly, but his voice carried power. You speak beautiful words, Captain, but in the moment, when death is real and close, many beings forget their ideals. How do we know humans would actually act as you claim? Daniel met the large alien's gaze steadily. Because we already have. Our history is full of humans who gave their lives to save others. Humans who ran into burning buildings to rescue children. Who jumped into freezing water to pull out drowning strangers. Who gave their food to the hungry even when they were hungry themselves. Who stood between the weak and the strong even when they knew they would not survive. Laura added, "We do not claim to be perfect, council member. Many humans have failed to live up to our ideals. Many have chosen selfishness over sacrifice. But those failures do not define us. What defines us is that we keep trying. We keep choosing to be better. We keep putting ourselves at risk for others, even when it would be easier not to." Quinn spoke softly from her seat. "But why? Why would a predator species choose to protect instead of exploit? It goes against your nature." Brandon smiled slightly. "Does it? Yes, we evolved as hunters, but we also evolved as social creatures. Humans survived because we worked together, because we protected each other, because we cared for our sick and our young and our old. A human alone in the wilderness would die, but humans together can survive anything." He continued, "We learned that our strength multiplies when we cooperate, that our survival depends on protecting our communities. These instincts are as much a part of our nature as hunting ever was, maybe more so." Daniel added, "And we learned something else. We learned that true strength is not about domination. Any animal can kill when it is hungry, any predator can take from the weak. But it takes real strength to show mercy, to help when you could harm, to protect when you could exploit. That is the strength we value most." Looked at the three humans for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been troubling him since their arrival. "If you believe these things so strongly, why did your ship approach us in silence? Why did you seem to hide your presence?" Laura looked surprised. "We were not hiding, Council Leader. Our ship's engines produce a frequency that we discovered causes extreme discomfort in most galactic species. We monitored your broadcasts and learned this. So we kept our engines at minimal power to avoid hurting anyone on this station. We thought silence was more polite than causing pain." The council members stared at her. Mediator quickly pulled up the technical analysis of the human ship. She read through it, her eyes widening. "It is true," she said quietly. "Their engine frequency would have caused significant distress to most species on this station. They were protecting us, even during their arrival." Quinn whispered, "Their first act was consideration for our, even before they introduced themselves." Sat down slowly. "I have heard enough, I believe them." "But how can we be certain?" another council member asked. "They have answered questions well, but questions are not reality." "Then we give them a real test," said, "but not one we create. We wait for circumstances to reveal their true nature." Daniel inclined his head. "We understand, Council Leader. We will wait as long as necessary. We want you to be certain about us before you make your decision. First contact is too important to rush." "You may return to your quarters," said. "We will continue our discussions." As the humans left, spoke to the council. "I was ready to fear them. I expected arrogance or aggression. Instead, I see beings who are strong enough to be gentle, who are powerful enough to choose mercy. Perhaps that is what makes them most dangerous, or perhaps it is what we need most." Nodded slowly. "We will see. If they are truly what they claim to be, circumstances will prove it. We need only wait." The council had been debating for 3 hours when the alarm started. The sound cut through their discussion like a knife. His head snapped up, his reptilian eyes wide with concern. Security Chief burst into the chamber, his armored body moving faster than it ever seen. "Council Leader, we have an emergency in the civilian sector. Environmental failure. Section 7 is depressurizing." Stood immediately. "Evacuate the section. Deploy emergency teams." "We are trying," said, his voice tight with stress. "But 17 beings are trapped. The exit sealed when the pressure dropped. We cannot open it remotely. Our security teams are suiting up now, but they need 20 minutes to reach the trapped civilians." "How long until Section 7 is fully depressurized?" asked. His face was grim. 18 minutes. The council chamber went silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. The security teams would arrive 2 minutes too late. The trapped beings would be dead. Quinn's voice shook. "Are there younglings in that section?" Nodded. 5. They were on an educational tour with their teacher. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Daniel Grant ran in, followed by Laura and Brandon. All 3 humans looked alert, focused, ready. "Where are they?" Daniel demanded. We heard the alarm, we can reach them. Turn to face the humans. Captain Grant, you cannot. The route to the trapped section is through damaged maintenance corridors, sharp debris, exposed electrical systems, partial gravity failure. My security personnel need specialized equipment to navigate it safely. Daniel's eyes were hard. Where are they? Laura stepped forward. Security Chief Captain Grant was a rescue specialist on Earth for 10 years. Brandon and I both served in emergency response. We have training for this. Tell us where they are. Hesitated, then pulled up a holographic map. It showed the station layout with the damaged section marked in red. The route to reach it was highlighted in yellow, winding through maintenance tunnels and damaged corridors. It looked impossible. Daniel studied the map for 5 seconds. We can do it. How much time? 17 minutes now, said. Then we leave now. Daniel turned to Council Leader. We are not asking permission. We are going, but it would help if you order your people not to stop us. Looked at the 3 humans. They were not armed. They were not wearing protective gear. They looked small and fragile compared to the armored security forces, but their eyes showed no fear, only determination. Go, said. Show them the fastest route. The humans ran. The council members pulled up security feeds on their screens, watching in real time as Daniel, Laura, and Brandon sprinted through the station corridors. Station personnel jumped out of their way, startled by their speed. They reached the damaged maintenance corridor in 90 seconds. The entrance was partially collapsed, with twisted metal blocking most of the opening. Daniel dropped to his knees and crawled through a gap barely large enough for his body. Laura followed, then Brandon. On the council chamber screens, the members watched the humans enter a nightmare. The corridor was dark, lit only by sparking electrical panels. Debris covered the floor. In some places, the walls had buckled, creating gaps where the darkness of space was visible through emergency force fields that would not last much longer. Daniel moved forward carefully but quickly. He tested each step before putting his weight down. Behind him, Laura did the same. Brandon brought up the rear, his eyes constantly scanning for dangers. They came to a section where the floor had collapsed. A gap of 3 meters separated one stable area from another. Below the gap was a drop of at least 10 meters into darkness. Daniel did not hesitate. He backed up 5 steps, then ran and jumped. He cleared the gap easily, landing and rolling to absorb the impact. He stood immediately and turned back. Laura, you are next, he called. Laura took the running start and jumped. She cleared the gap but landed awkwardly. Daniel caught her arm and steadied her. Brandon jumped last, making it look almost easy. In the council chamber, Quinn gasped. They jumped that gap without safety lines, without hesitation. 15 minutes, announced, his voice tight. The humans moved faster now. They climbed over a pile of debris that blocked the corridor, their movements smooth and coordinated. When Brandon's foot slipped, Laura grabbed his arm without looking, steadying him automatically. When Daniel encountered an exposed electrical panel sparking with dangerous energy, he simply pulled his shirt over his hand and ripped the panel free from the wall, tossing it aside. They reached a vertical shaft where a ladder had once been. The ladder was gone now, torn away by whatever had caused the damage. The shaft led upward for 15 meters. Brandon looked at the shaft walls. They were mostly smooth, with only small protrusions for maintenance equipment. This is impossible to climb. Daniel studied the walls for 2 seconds. No, look, handholds every 1.5 meters, we can make it. He jumped up, caught a small protrusion, pulled himself higher, and caught another. He climbed the shaft like a spider, finding holds that seemed too small to be useful. Laura followed, and then Brandon. On the screens, council members watched in amazement. The climb should have been impossible, but the humans made it look merely difficult. 12 minutes, said. At the top of the shaft, the humans entered another corridor. This one was worse. The gravity had completely failed here. They were in 0 gravity, and the air was already thin. All 3 humans showed signs of oxygen deprivation, but they pushed forward. Laura pulled herself along the corridor using small protrusions on the walls. Daniel moved ahead, using a technique that seemed impossible without training. Brandon followed, though his movements were getting slower. They passed through a section where a chemical fire had damaged the walls. The metal was still hot. Daniel pressed his back against one wall, the heat burning through his shirt, and used his legs to push Laura past him through the narrow gap. She gasped in pain as her shoulder scraped against hot metal, but she kept moving. Brandon went next, and then Daniel followed. 9 minutes announced. The humans were getting injured now. The council could see blood on Daniel's back where the hot metal had burned him. Laura's shoulder was bleeding. Brandon had cuts on his hands from pulling himself along rough surfaces, but they did not slow down. Finally, they reached the sealed door that blocked access to Section 7. Behind that door were 17 trapped beings, including 5 younglings. Daniel examined the door. It was locked tight by emergency protocols. Normally, it required a security override to open, but the security systems in this area were damaged. "We need to force it," Daniel said. The 3 humans positioned themselves, Daniel and Brandon on one side of the door, Laura on the other. They wedged their fingers into the tiny gap where the door met the frame. "Pull," Daniel commanded. They pulled. The door did not move. They were trying to do by hand what normally required hydraulic systems. It was impossible. They pulled harder. In the council chamber, leaned forward, watching intently. "They cannot do this. The door is designed to withstand explosive decompression. 3 beings cannot open it manually." But the humans were not stopping. Their muscles strained. Their faces showed intense effort. Blood dripped from their fingers as the sharp edge of the door cut into their hands. The door moved, just a centimeter, but it moved. "Again," Daniel said through gritted teeth. They pulled. The door opened another centimeter, then another. The gap was now wide enough to get better grip. They repositioned their hands and pulled again. The door slid open half a meter, then a full meter, just enough for a body to fit through. 7 minutes, said, his voice filled with disbelief. Daniel went through first. The chamber beyond was in chaos. 17 aliens huddled together, their faces showing terror. The air was already dangerously thin. In the corner, 5 younglings clung to their teacher, crying. Laura came through the door next, then Brandon. Daniel quickly assessed the situation. Several of the trapped aliens were injured. One elderly was unconscious. 2 of the younglings were barely breathing in the thin air. "We have to move them now," Brandon said. Daniel nodded. "We carry anyone who cannot move on their own. Everyone else follows us. Stay close, stay together." The aliens stared at the humans with fear. They had heard that humans were predators. They had seen the data about Earth. And now 3 of these dangerous beings were standing before them, covered in blood and injuries, asking them to follow into a damaged corridor. Laura knelt down to the youngling's level. Her face was gentle despite the pain she was clearly in. "We are here to help. I know you are scared, but we are going to get you out. Do you trust me?" The smallest youngling, barely bigger than a human toddler, looked at Laura with wide eyes. Then slowly, the youngling reached out and took Laura's hand. 5 minutes, Kame's voice through the emergency speakers. Daniel moved quickly. He lifted the unconscious onto his back. The alien was heavy, but Daniel stood without visible effort. Brandon picked up one of the injured, cradling the alien carefully. Laura took the hands of 3 younglings, keeping them close. "Stay together," Daniel commanded the remaining aliens. "Follow me exactly. Do not touch anything. Do not fall behind." They moved back into the corridor. The journey that had been difficult for 3 fit humans was nearly impossible with 17 frightened, injured aliens. Daniel moved slowly, testing every surface before allowing the group to follow. He carried the heavy without complaint, even though the council watching the screens could see his legs shaking with effort. At the vertical shaft, the real challenge began. The aliens could not climb like the humans had. Daniel looked at the situation and made a quick decision. "Brandon, you go down first. I will lower them to you one at a time." Brandon nodded and climbed down the shaft. When he reached the bottom, Daniel carefully lowered each alien down. He held their weight with his arms, lowering them slowly enough that Brandon could grab them and pull them to safety. His arms were shaking by the 3rd alien. By the 7th, blood was running from his hands where his grip was tearing his skin. But he did not stop. He lowered all 17 aliens down the shaft, one by one, with Laura helping to steady them at the top. 3 minutes announced. When all the aliens were down, Laura went next, then Daniel. At the bottom, Daniel picked up the unconscious again. His face was pale now from pain and exhaustion, but his expression remained determined. They reached the collapsed floor where they had jumped. The aliens could not make that jump. Daniel looked at the gap and then at the ceiling. There were exposed pipes running across the top of the corridor. "New plan," he said. He handed it to Brandon and jumped up, grabbing one of the pipes. It held his weight. He swung across the gap and landed on the other side. Then he braced himself and held out his arms. "Throw the younglings, I will catch them." Laura picked up the smallest youngling. The little one whimpered in fear. "It is okay," Laura whispered. "He will catch you. Humans never drop children, never." She tossed the youngling gently across the gap. Daniel caught the small alien easily, cradling them safely before setting them down. One by one, the younglings were passed across. Then the adults, with Brandon and Laura helping them grab the pipes and swing across. 2 minutes, said. Daniel picked up the unconscious again. They moved faster now, all 17 aliens following the 3 humans through the nightmare corridor. When electrical panels sparked, the humans used their bodies as shields. When sharp debris blocked the path, they lifted the aliens over it. They reached the final corridor. Safety was 30 meters away, but the force fields protecting this section from space were failing. Through the gaps in the walls, stars were visible. 1 minute, announced. Evacuate immediately. Daniel started to run, still carrying the other aliens followed, terror giving them speed. Laura ran with the younglings, one under each arm and one clinging to her back. Brandon herded the rest, making sure no one fell behind. The force fields began to fail completely. Air rushed out through the gaps. The pressure dropped rapidly. Everyone struggled to breathe. With 30 seconds remaining, they burst through the final door into the safe section of the station. Medical teams rushed forward. The 3 humans collapsed against the wall, their bodies finally giving out. The last thing Daniel saw before his vision went dark was the smallest youngling, alive and safe, reaching out toward him. In the council chamber, every member stood in shocked silence. They had watched 3 humans do the impossible. They had witnessed beings who claimed to be predators risk everything to save strangers. Looked at the screens showing the humans being treated by medical teams. All 3 were injured, exhausted, and bleeding, but all 17 aliens were alive. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft sounds of healing equipment. Daniel lay on a bed designed for beings much different from humans, but the medical staff had adapted it as best they could. His ribs were wrapped tightly where they had fractured during the rescue. Burns covered his back where the hot metal had seared his skin. His hands were bandaged from gripping the sharp edges of the door. In the bed next to him, Laura rested with her shoulder immobilized. The joint had been dislocated when she squeezed through the narrow gap. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alert. Across the room, Brandon sat up despite the medical staff's protests. He had a concussion and cuts all over his hands, but he refused to lie down. "We should check on the civilians," Brandon said for the 5th time. "They are fine," the medical attendant assured him again. The attendant was a small, furry creature from a garden world. She kept staring at the humans with something like awe. "You saved them all. Every single one is alive and recovering." "Good," Daniel said quietly, then winced as the movement hurt his ribs. The medical bay doors opened. Entered, followed by Ann Quinn. The 3 council members stopped a respectful distance from the human beds. Captain Grant said, "How are you feeling?" "Alive," Daniel replied with a slight smile. "Same as the 17 beings we pulled out of that section. I would say it was a good day." "A good day," Quinn repeated softly. "You nearly died, all 3 of you. Your bodies are covered in injuries." Laura shrugged with her good shoulder. "We heal fast. We will be fine in a few days." Stepped closer, his massive frame seeming even larger in the medical bay. "Why did you do it? You could have waited for our security teams. You did not have to risk yourselves." The 3 humans exchanged glances, confused by the question. Brandon answered, "Because waiting meant those people might die, we could not allow that." "But you did not know them," said. "You had never met them. They were not your species. They were not your responsibility." Daniel tried to sit up, failed, and lay back down with a grunt of pain. "Council leader, with respect, that is exactly wrong. They were strangers. They were innocent. They were in danger. That made them our responsibility, not because we were ordered to help, not because we expected reward, but because helping was the right thing to do." Before could respond, the medical bay doors opened again. A small group entered, moving carefully. It was the rescued civilians. The elderly who Daniel had carried was walking slowly, supported by 2 others. Behind them came the teacher with the 5 younglings. They approached Daniel's bed. His large eyes were wet with emotion. "Human," he said, his voice rough with age. "I was conscious for part of the rescue. I felt your ribs break when you carried me. I told you to leave me and save the younglings instead. Do you remember what you said?" Daniel nodded. "I said I was strong enough to carry everyone. I was not strong enough to leave anyone behind." This voice broke. "I have lived for 90 cycles. I have seen much, but I have never seen courage like that, not from any species. You could have saved yourself. You could have saved only the younglings and left the adults. But you refused to choose. You saved all of us even though it broke your body to do so." The teacher stepped forward with the younglings clustered around her. The smallest one, the first who had taken Laura's hand, moved to the edge of Laura's bed. "Why did you protect me?" the youngling asked in a tiny voice. "My teacher says you come from she says everything there wants to kill everything else, but you got hurt so I would not get hurt. Why?" Laura's eyes softened. She reached down with her good arm and gently touched the top of the youngling's head. "Because that is what adults do. We protect children, all children, no matter what species they are. On Earth, we have a rule. Children are always protected first. Always." The youngling looked up at her. "But your shoulder is broken and you have burns and cuts. Does it hurt?" "Yes," Laura admitted. "It hurts quite a lot." "I am sorry you got hurt because of me." Laura smiled, and despite her pain, it was a beautiful smile. "Do not be sorry. I would do it again, 1,000 times. Your life is worth more than my comfort." The smallest youngling suddenly reached up and hugged Laura as best as a small alien could hug a human. "Thank you," the little one whispered. Tears ran down Laura's face. Daniel and Brandon looked away, their own eyes wet. Watched this scene and felt something shift in his understanding. These were not just predators who chose to be good. They were beings who loved and protected with the same intensity that they could fight and hunt. Their capacity for violence was matched by an equal capacity for gentleness. Cleared his throat. "The council has called an emergency session. It will begin in 1 hour. All rescued civilians have been asked to attend and testify. Captain Grant, if you are able, we would like you and your team to be present as well." "We will be there," Daniel said immediately. "You need rest," the medical attendant protested. "We will be there," Daniel repeated firmly. 1 hour later, the council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Every seat was filled. Representatives from councils across the station had asked permission to observe. The rescued civilians sat in a special section, the younglings clustered together with their teacher. Daniel, Laura, and Brandon entered the chamber. All three were walking, though it clearly caused them pain. Daniel moved stiffly, his ribs still healing. Laura's arm was in a sling. Brandon had bandages visible on his hands and a patch over one eye from the concussion. As they walked to the speaker's platform, something unexpected happened. Every being in the chamber stood. It was a gesture of respect normally reserved for the eldest council members or visiting heads of state. The humans looked around, confused, as hundreds of aliens rose to honor them. Waited until the humans reached the platform, then gestured for everyone to sit. The chamber fell silent. "We are gathered for an emergency session," announced. "The council must vote on humanity's application for membership in the council. But first, we will hear testimony from those who were rescued from Section 7. The elderly stood and walked to the speaker's area. His voice was clear and strong despite his age. "My name is Or. I have served the Assembly for 60 cycles as a cultural historian. Yesterday, I believed I would die in that sealed section, unable to breathe, watching the younglings around me slowly suffocate." He paused, looking directly at the three humans. Then 3 beings from a species I had never met burst through a sealed door. They had traveled through impossible corridors to reach us. They were already injured, already bleeding, but they did not hesitate. "This human," he pointed at Daniel, "put me on his back and carried me. I am not a small being. I am heavy. I felt his bones crack with each step he took. When I begged him to leave me behind and save the younglings, he refused." Or's voice grew stronger. "I asked him why. Why would he risk his life for an old stranger? Do you know what he said? He said, 'Because you matter, your life has value, and I am strong enough to save you.' Not strong enough to carry me, strong enough to save me. He saw it as his responsibility, his duty, because he had the strength and I needed help." They looked around the chamber. "I have studied hundreds of species. I have read countless histories, but I have never encountered beings like these humans. They have the capacity for great violence, yes, but they also have the capacity for even greater compassion. They are predators who hunt evil, not innocents. They are dangerous, but only to those who threaten the weak. He sat down and the teacher stood up. She was a tall, thin being from a peaceful world. My name is Lensha. I teach younglings about the diversity of life in the galaxy. Yesterday, I failed to protect my students. We were trapped, and I could do nothing but hold them as they cried. Her voice shook. Then Laura appeared. She knelt down to their level. She spoke gently. She promised to save them, and when the smallest one reached for her hand, she took it without hesitation. She carried 3 younglings through a corridor filled with dangers. She put her body between them and every threat. Her shoulder was dislocated, her skin was burned, but she never let go of those children. Lensha looked at Laura. My people have a saying. We judge a civilization not by its weapons or its technology, but by how it treats those who cannot defend themselves. By that measure, humanity is the most civilized species I have ever encountered. One by one, the other rescued civilians stood and spoke. Each told their story. Each described how the humans had protected them, helped them, sacrificed for them. The testimonies went on for an hour. Finally, it was the smallest youngling's turn. The little one walked to the center of the chamber, looking tiny and fragile, surrounded by so many large beings. Bent down to the youngling's level. Little one, he said gently, you do not have to speak if you are frightened. I am not frightened anymore, the youngling said. Laura said humans protect children. She said it is their most important rule. Is that true? The youngling looked at Laura, who nodded from the speaker's platform. The youngling turned back to, my teacher told us that humans come from a terrible world where everything fights. She said humans are predators. She said they are dangerous. The little one paused. But Laura protected me. She got hurt so I would not get hurt. If that is what predators do, then maybe predators are not bad. Maybe they are heroes. The chamber was completely silent. Then, slowly, beings began to tap their appendages against their seats. It was the galactic gesture of agreement and approval. The tapping grew louder, filling the chamber with sound. Stood tall. The testimonies are complete. The Council will now vote on humanity's application. But this is not just a vote for membership in the Council. This is a vote to recognize Earth as a Class 5 and to offer humanity a place in the Assembly Security Council. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Security Council was one of the most important positions in the Assembly. Continued, humanity has shown us that beings from the harshest worlds can become the gentlest guardians, that predators can choose to protect. That strength can serve kindness rather than cruelty. We need that perspective. We need that courage. We need humanity. He looked around the chamber. Council members, cast your votes. Stood first. I vote to accept humanity. I have lived my entire life on a high-gravity world. I believed I understood strength. But these humans taught me that true strength is not in how much weight you can carry. It is in choosing to carry others when you could walk free. I vote yes. Quinn rose next. I come from a harsh desert world. My people survive through caution and careful planning. But yesterday I watched humans throw caution aside to save strangers. They did not calculate the risks. They did not debate the right course of action. They simply acted immediately and selflessly. That is not recklessness. That is heroism. I vote yes. Mediator stood. When humanity first arrived, I feared them. Their capacity for violence, their predatory nature, their dangerous world, I thought we should reject them, perhaps even quarantine their planet. But I was wrong. They are dangerous, yes, but they are dangerous to threats, not to innocents. They are predators who hunt evil, not weakness. I vote yes. One by one, every council member stood and voted. Every single vote was yes. When the last vote was cast, tapped his staff. The vote is unanimous. Earth is recognized as a Class 5. Humanity is granted full membership in the Council and invited to join the Assembly Security Council. The chamber erupted in the tapping sound of approval. Daniel, Laura, and Brandon stood together, overwhelmed by the response. Raised his hand for silence. But there is one more thing. Our analysis of the human vessel is complete. We learned something important. Your ship's engines produce a frequency that causes distress in most galactic species. You kept your ship in low-power mode during your entire visit to avoid causing discomfort. Your first act, before you even introduced yourselves, was to protect our... He paused. This tells us everything we need to know about humanity. You consider others first. You avoid harm even when it costs you convenience. You protect even those who might fear you. These are not the actions of conquerors. These are the actions of guardians. approached the three humans, and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting that he had learned. Daniel shook it carefully, mindful of his injured hands. "Welcome to the assembly, Captain Grant. Welcome to all of humanity. We are honored to know you." 6 months passed. Human vessels now patrolled the dangerous regions of assembly space. They responded to distress calls with incredible speed. They escorted vulnerable cargo ships through pirate zones. They investigated anomalies and protected settlements. The galaxy had learned quickly that when the dark, silent ships appeared, help had arrived. Species that had once feared humanity now hoped to see them. A human presence meant safety. In the council, Daniel had become a respected voice. Laura served as humanity's primary diplomat, building relationships across the assembly. Brandon worked with alien scientists, sharing Earth's unique knowledge of survival and adaptation. On this particular day, Daniel stood on the observation deck of a human patrol ship. They had just responded to a distress call from a merchant vessel under attack by pirates. The pirates had fled immediately when they detected the human ship. The merchants were safe. Laura joined him at the window. Her shoulder had healed completely. "We just received word from Earth. They are sending 3 more ships to join the patrol. The assembly requested additional human presence in the outer territories." "We are becoming the galaxy's guardians," Brandon said, walking up behind them. "Just like we said we would be." Daniel nodded. "It is a big responsibility." "But we are strong enough to carry it," Laura said, echoing the words Daniel had spoken during the rescue. "We are human. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is who we are." Below them, on a small civilian transport, a family of aliens traveled safely through what had once been dangerous space. The younglings looked out the window and saw the dark human vessel keeping pace with them. "Why do the humans protect us?" one youngling asked their parent. The parent, who had been present in the council chamber that day 6 months ago, smiled. "Because that is what humans do. They are strong, so they protect the weak. They are dangerous, so they fight danger. They survived a brutal world, so they ensure others do not have to suffer as they once did." "Are they heroes?" the youngling asked. The parent looked at the human ship, its dark hull barely visible against the stars. "Yes, little one, they are heroes, and we are lucky they chose to share the galaxy with us." Across the assembly, a saying had indeed spread. It was spoken in hundreds of languages on hundreds of worlds. When danger approached, when hope seemed lost, beings whispered the words like a prayer. "Pray you never need a human, but if you do, pray one is nearby." And in the darkness of space, the silent vessels continued their eternal patrol. Shadows that had emerged from a harsh world, now standing guard over a galaxy that had learned to trust them. Predators who had chosen to become protectors. Hunters who had decided to guard the hunted. Humanity had arrived at the council, and the galaxy would never be the same. The day humanity landed, shadows emerged from a silent vessel. But those shadows brought not darkness but hope, not fear but safety, not conquest but protection. They brought themselves, dangerous and gentle, violent and kind, strong and merciful. They brought everything that Earth had made them, and they offered it all in service of those who needed defending. That was the day the galaxy learned that sometimes, the most dangerous beings make the best guardians. And sometimes, predators from are exactly what a peaceful galaxy needs. Spoke quietly. They did not have to do that. They could have waited for our security teams. They chose to risk their lives for beings they had never met. "And they succeeded," Quinn whispered, "against impossible odds." Mediator stood slowly. "They told us they protect those who cannot protect themselves. They told us they sacrifice for the innocent. We did not believe mere words, so they showed us with actions." Nodded, "Call an emergency session. All council members, we vote at dawn." The vote would be unanimous. But first, the galaxy needed to hear from those who had been saved. The testimony of the rescued would change everything. They did not have to wait long. In less than 6 hours, an emergency would give humanity a chance to prove everything they had said. And in that emergency, the galaxy would learn what humans do when no one is watching, when there is no reward for doing the right thing, when helping others means risking everything. The test was coming. Neither the council nor the humans knew it yet, but the most important moment of first contact was only hours away. "And if they do not?" Brandon asked. Daniel turned back to his companions. Then we return to Earth and wait. We have waited this long. We can wait longer, but I hope we do not have to. The galaxy needs to know that predators can choose peace, that strength can serve kindness, that the most dangerous beings can also be the most gentle. Laura stood and joined him at the window. They will test us, somehow, and when they do, we show them who we really are. Outside in the council chamber was thinking the same thing. These humans needed to be tested. But what test could measure the heart of a predator species? What scenario could reveal whether they would choose violence or mercy? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. Hunters who had decided to become guardians, and survivors from a brutal world who valued gentleness above all else. Tomorrow, everything would change.